Hey everyone, this is Taehyung. Before we dive in, I want to ask, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. I'm curious how far this story will travel because what I'm about to say, I've never shared publicly. Not with fans, not with the media, not even with the people closest to me. Maybe I never had the courage. Maybe I was afraid of what would change. But the truth has lived inside me for years, quietly pressing against my chest, waiting for a moment when I could finally speak it aloud. And I think that moment is now. I can't get married in Korea. Not today, not soon, maybe not ever. And Jungkook knows why. I know that sounds dramatic, maybe confusing, maybe even unbelievable. But before you judge, stay with me. This isn't about fame or pressure or the kinds of things people imagine when they think about life as a celebrity. This is something deep, something about love, identity, and the cost of living under a spotlight so bright it blinds even the people standing closest to you. For years, I believed I understood what it meant to build a future. Every song, every performance, every sleepless night was part of a plan I didn't question. I told myself that if I worked hard enough, if I gave everything, I would earn freedom, a version of peace that could let me live normally again. But freedom didn't arrive the way I thought it would. The more I achieved, the smaller the space became for anything that truly belonged to me. When you grow up in this industry, you perform your emotions before you learn to feel them. You smile on camera, cry on broadcast, tell stories that sound intimate but are rehearsed. You give the world everything except the pieces of yourself that matter most. Somewhere along the way, you start confusing what's real with what's staged. I used to think marriage was just another milestone, like winning an award or performing at a sold out arena. But recently, I've realized it's not about the ceremony or the applause or the expectation. It's about presence, about courage, about letting someone see you without the lights, without filters, without the legend. And I'm still learning how to do that. It started quietly last year. I was in Busan visiting my family for the first time in months. My mother was cooking my favorite dish, marinated crab, the rice still steaming, and she asked a question I'd avoided for years. When will you settle down, Tae? She said, smiling, though I could see the worry in her eyes. You can't keep living like this, always on the move. You need someone who waits for you. That night, I didn't answer. I just stared at the reflection of the TV light against the window, wondering if she even knew that I didn't understand what home meant anymore. The next morning, Jungkook called me. He has this way of sensing things without words. Are you okay? He asked. I said I was, but I wasn't. He didn't believe me. You sound like you're running from something, he said, and he was right. It wasn't fame, not this time. The truth is, years ago, there was someone I wanted to marry, someone who wasn't in this world, someone who didn't care about charts or cameras. She was simple, kind, unpretentious, and terrifyingly real. For the first time, I felt like I could just exist, not as Taehyung of BTS, but as Taehyung the person. And that's why it was impossible. In Korea, under my name, every choice becomes public property. Love isn't private, it's a scandal waiting to happen. I couldn't let her life become collateral damage in my story. so I ended it before it began. I told her she deserved someone who could walk beside her in daylight, not someone who had to hide her in the shadows. She cried. I told myself it was kindness, but sometimes I wonder if it wasn't cowardice. Jungkook was the only one who knew. He's seen the version of me that doesn't make it to interviews. The quiet, the restless, the one who stares at the city lights alone after concerts. He never judges, he listens. That's what keeps me grounded sometime. There's something about him, about this bond, that feels like home even when the world is loud. When I told him I couldn't imagine marrying in Korea, he didn't argue. He simply said, I understand, but it wasn't mere acceptance, it was empathy. Because he knows what it means to love silently. There's a truth that hits you when you live life on display. Love and art are intertwined, both demanding sacrifice. Being in BTS means giving your heart to millions at once. Singing about love, loss, hope, but rarely living it in private. Every emotion becomes public. Every goodbye becomes content. Namjoon always reminds me that purpose outweighs feeling. Perhaps that's why I chose this path because purpose feels safer than vulnerability. But J-Hope believes love should be celebrated, not hidden. Sometimes I wish I had his courage. But for me, it's not about courage. It's about timing. Every time I feel I could love, life pulls me away. Another tour, another project, another country. Success becomes a drug you can't quit because stopping feels like falling. And yet, when I watch our members laughing together, when I see fans who've grown with us holding signs that say, Thank you for being part of my life, something stirs inside me. Gratitude, yes, but also quiet grief. Because I've given so much to this dream, but what have I lost? Late at night, I imagine a different life. One where I'm just a man, not an idol, walking hand in hand along the Han River without cameras. Introducing someone to my parents without hashtags or trending news. Waking up without checking headlines. That life feels close yet impossibly far. When I told Jungkook that I couldn't imagine marrying here, he said something I didn't understand at the time, but I do now. It's not about where you marry, it's about how. Love isn't geography, it's honesty, bravery, and letting someone see the parts of you the world isn't meant to see. Maybe that's why I haven't married yet. Not because I can't, but because I'm still learning to reveal all of myself without hiding behind the performer. People see the lights, the awards, the interviews, but they don't see the loneliness after the applause fades. When I got home that night, I called Jungkook again. It was late, but he answered, as always. I told him about the couple under the umbrella, about how simple and real it felt. He listened quietly, like he always does. Then he said something that stuck with me. Sometimes love isn't about being seen, it's about being safe. And he was right. Safety, not just physical but emotional. The ability to exist without fear of judgment, without the weight of expectation pressing down in Korea, especially for someone like me, that safety is rare. Every decision, every relationship, every glance is scrutinized. Nothing remains private. I thought about the first time I truly understood that love and visibility were incompatible in my life. It was years ago, before any of us imagined BTS would reach this scale. I met someone who didn't know about the industry, who didn't care about fame, charts, or cameras. We met quietly, away from Seoul, where no one knew who I was. She was calm, present, and terrifyingly unguarded. We laughed, we talked, we existed without performance, and for the first time I felt whole. But even then, I knew I couldn't keep that life. Korea's gaze is relentless. Every rumor is magnified, every glance interpreted, every silence questioned. Protecting her meant ending it before it began, and I did. That decision haunted me, though I never admitted it, not even to myself. I told Jungkook everything because he sees the parts of me no one else does, the quiet storms, the exhaustion that hits after concerts, the guilt of wanting something ordinary when my life is extraordinary. He never judges, he just listens. Sometimes listening is enough. It grounds me, reminds me that even in a world built on spectacle, there's someone who understands the real me. For years, I've watched love exist in fragments, in moments with the members, in small gestures that aren't photographed or recorded. Namjoon leaving a note on my door, J-Hope staying behind to make sure I laughed after a rough day. The quiet pride in Jungkook when he sees me succeed, those moments are intimate, private, and they've taught me more about love than any headline ever could. Love isn't always grand. Sometimes it's being present, being patient, being willing to hold a space for someone without needing to perform it. And yet, the world never stops watching. Even now, every smile, every conversation, every thought risks exposure. Love becomes a spectacle. Intimacy becomes a rumor. Yi once told me, true love isn't about balance, it's about rhythm. Sometimes you lead, sometimes you follow, but you keep dancing. I've been learning that slowly, painfully, in silence. Because rhythm requires space. And in my life, space is a luxury. Every tour, every schedule, every project fills the gaps where love could grow. I've had to postpone, pause, step back, sometimes indefinitely. I think about my past relationships and I see the patterns clearly now. Every connection I could have nurtured was disrupted by proximity, by attention, by my own inability to exist quietly. I've loved before, deeply, fully, but life demanded otherwise. There's a song I wrote years ago, lines that I didn't fully understand until recently. Even if I can't hold your hand, I'll still hold your world. That's the kind of love I've been practicing, distant, protective, careful, not absent, just preserved. Sacred. J-Hope often says love should be louder than fear. He doesn't hide his heart. He shares it boldly, openly. I admire that. But for me, loudness brings danger. Exposure brings consequence. The word's gaze is heavy. When you're loved by millions, your private choices become public property. Your partner becomes collateral in your story, no matter how much you try to shield them. And that weight, that's what keeps me from marriage here. It's not unwillingness. It's protection. Some nights I wander so alone. Hoodie up, mask on, invisible for once. The streets are wet from rain, lights reflecting on asphalt, quiet. I watch couples pass, holding hands, laughing, not jealousy, longing, A yearning for a life where love exists in its simplest form, where I can exist without the burden of a persona. I whisper to myself, maybe that's why I can't get married here. I've forgotten how to be invisible, how to be quiet, how to just be. And yet, I keep learning. Jungkook reminds me that love doesn't need an audience, that presence, honesty, and trust matter more than geography. I practice it every day in small ways, with the members, in music, in moments of silence. With each song I write, each lyric I pour from my heart, I am practicing being able to love fully without performance. This is my rehearsal for the future, for someone who will love me, not for the stage, not for the fame, but for the person I am when the lights go out. Sometimes I wonder if anyone could handle this life. Endless distance, constant attention, scrutiny from every angle. They'd need to see through the image to the man beneath. To laugh with me when the cameras turn off, to remind me I'm human, fallible, capable of joy and sadness alike. Could someone exist who can love that version of me freely without fear? Maybe she's out there, maybe not. But until I find her, I have to keep learning, keep practicing, keep preserving love quietly. Even in my solitude, I find love everywhere. In the members' laughter after long rehearsals, in quiet messages from fans, in moments of music that allow me to express what words cannot. These fragments remind me that love isn't always about ceremony, vows, or public approval. It's about presence, it's about care, attention, patience. It's about allowing yourself to exist fully and giving someone else the space to do the same. I remember standing backstage in New York during our last tour. The arena roaring, the crowd electric, the energy overwhelming. I looked at the members and realized something: love is already around me. Not romantic, not headline worthy, but real. The quiet, consistent, unspectacular love that doesn't demand proof, applause, or recognition. Maybe that's why I haven't married yet. I've been practicing, learning, growing, making sure I can give love fully when the right moment arrives. Sometimes I imagine a future, a life where I can love freely, where privacy is possible, where marriage doesn't mean sacrifice to the public's gaze. A life where my mornings are mine, my evenings quiet, my presence unmeasured by expectations. That life feels distant yet tangible in fragments: the smiles of the members, the warmth of music, the rare quiet moments of human connection that remind me why love matters. Marriage here isn't impossible because I lack desire. It's impossible because I haven't yet mastered the delicate art of giving love safely. To give without fear, to protect without isolating, to exist without performance. And that's what Jungkook understands. That's why he listens. That's why he doesn't try to fix me. He knows that love for someone like me must first be nurtured in silence, practiced in fragments, safeguarded until it can exist fully without compromise. Sometimes, late at night, I sit in my apartment and stare at the city lights bleeding through the window. It's quiet, almost unbearably so. That's when thoughts come, the ones I don't say aloud, the ones I keep to myself. I wonder if anyone could truly love me beyond the public image, beyond the stage, beyond the fame that defines me to the world. Could someone see the real me, the man who sometimes struggles to breathe under the weight of expectation, who sometimes longs for silence more than applause. I think about marriage not as a ceremony, not as a headline, not as a moment captured for thousands to witness, but as a space, a place where two people can exist fully, quietly, without fear. That's what I want. A love where presence matters more than performance. But in Korea, where every glance is scrutinized, every relationship dissected, that space feels impossible to find. It's not the country itself, it's the gaze that comes with being me, with being Taehyung, a name everyone knows, a face everyone watches. Jungkook once told me, "You're afraid not of love, but of misunderstanding." And he was right. That fear has followed me for years. I've loved quietly, carefully, often from a distance, protecting those I care for because exposure could hurt them in ways I can't control. That's why I can't get married here, not yet. Not until I can create a space where love is safe, where it can breathe without collapsing under attention. I remember the first time I truly realized what that meant. It was years ago. I met someone extraordinary, someone who existed outside of this world of lights and cameras. We would meet in quiet cafes, walk the streets without anyone noticing, talk about dreams, about nothing, about everything. She never asked about my career, never inquired about schedules or tours. She saw me, not Taehyung, the performer, not the idol, not the person everyone expected me to be, but me, just me. And that was the most terrifying thing I'd ever felt. Because once you let someone see the real you, the unfiltered, unpolished, vulnerable self, you realize how fragile it all is. And I protected her. I let go before love could fully blossom because I knew the world would intrude. Even a simple dinner could become a headline, a glance could become speculation, and I couldn't risk making her life a casualty of my fame. That decision has haunted me ever since, shaping how I think about love, about marriage, about safety. Yet, love finds ways to teach us even in absence. Every note Namjoon leaves, every gesture from J-Hope, every laugh shared with Jungkook, every quiet conversation with Yoongi, they're lessons in intimacy, in trust, in being present without needing an audience. They remind me that love doesn't always need to be romantic to be profound. Sometimes it's in the smallest moments, in the quietest spaces, in the laughter that follows exhaustion. And still, the question lingers, could I ever marry in Korea? Could I ever find someone who understands this life, who can see me fully, and still choose to stay? The truth is, I don't know. But I do know that I want it to be real, not performative, not measured in likes or headlines. I want a love that doesn't need validation from the world, a love that exists because it simply is, because it's present, because it's chosen every day. I've come to see marriage as less about legality, less about ceremony, and more about courage. Courage to be seen, to be known, to allow someone into the deepest corners of yourself. That's why it feels impossible here. The world expects me to be perfect, to perform endlessly, to maintain the image of Taehyung the idol. But marriage demands Taehyung, the man, the vulnerable, unguarded, human version of me, and I'm not sure everyone would accept him. Sometimes I think about the future. A life where I can wake up without headlines dictating my day, where I can walk hand in hand with someone without speculation following us, where love is quiet, safe, and sacred. That life feels distant but tangible. In moments, the laughter of the members, the warmth of music, the brief private glances that remind me connection exists even when it isn't broadcast to millions. I think about my past loves, the ones that taught me about sacrifice, about patience, about letting go. Each of them left an imprint, a lesson in how fragile love can be when exposed. And I carry those lessons now, practicing, learning, growing, preparing for the day I can give love fully, without fear, without restraint, without compromise. Even now, I find love in unexpected places, in the members' laughter after rehearsal, in a fan's heartfelt message, in the quiet moments of reflection after a performance. These fragments remind me that love doesn't need to be loud to exist. It doesn't need an audience. It thrives in presence, in patience, in the willingness to exist fully alongside someone else. Marriage, for me, isn't a date, a ring, or a ceremony. It's a commitment to presence, a daily choice to witness someone's truth and allow them to witness mine. That's why I haven't married yet. I'm learning to give love without performing it, to exist without being constantly observed, to protect intimacy in a world that constantly seeks exposure. Sometimes I imagine meeting her again, not as Taehyung the idol, not as a celebrity, not as someone the world watches, but as me. A man who has learned, grown, and waited patiently for love to exist safely. I tell her that I've spent years practicing, learning how to love quietly, how to be present, how to protect without smothering. That I've loved millions, but I've still been learning how to love one. Maybe one day I'll find her or she'll find me. Maybe it won't be in Korea. Maybe it will be somewhere quiet, far from the spotlight, where presence matters more than performance. And when that day comes, I hope to be ready, ready to love fully, openly, and safely, ready to give myself without compromise, without fear, without the weight of expectation. Until then, I keep practicing, I keep learning, I keep observing, reflecting, and holding space for love to grow in quiet, sacred corners of my life. In music, in friendships, in fleeting moments of solitude that remind me I am human. Because love, like music, needs patience, rehearsal, and space to breathe before it can be fully realized. I've built a life that rarely allows stillness, yet in those rare pauses, I find clarity. I realize that love isn't about perfection, about timing, about geography. It's about readiness, presence, and courage. And that's what I'm cultivating in myself now. The courage to exist fully, to love deeply, to protect intimacy, and to be patient until the world allows me the space to marry, not for them, but for me, for her, for the sacredness of what love truly is. And maybe, just maybe, one day the stage lights will dim, the cameras will fade, and I'll finally be able to love openly, privately, without fear, without compromise. Until then, I will continue to practice, to grow, and to protect the love that exists in quiet, sacred spaces. The love that waits patiently for the right moment, the right place, the right person. Sometimes I think about how strange it is to live in two worlds at once. One where every word, every gesture, every smile is amplified, scrutinized, and shared, and another where silence is sacred, intimacy is private, and love is safe. It's a paradox I live with daily. I've spent years performing not just on stage, but in life, constantly aware of eyes, judgments, expectations, and yet, in the quiet moments, the ones no one sees, I feel the pull toward normalcy, toward love that exists for itself, not for an audience. I remember walking along the Han River late one night. The city lights shimmered against the water, and the rain fell quietly, creating a rhythm that seemed to sync with my heartbeat. I saw a couple under an umbrella laughing, entirely absorbed in each other. It wasn't perfection, they were soaked, unpolished, real, but it struck me deeply. That was the kind of love I wanted, unguarded, private, present, and in that moment I whispered to myself, maybe that's why I can't get married here, because I don't know how to live quietly anymore. Jim has been my anchor through all of this. He listens without judgment, offering insights that cut through the noise surrounding me. He once said, "You're not afraid of marriage, Taehyung. You're afraid of being misunderstood." That hit me because it's true. I've loved, I've cared, I've risked opening my heart, but always with caution. The world is never gentle with vulnerability, especially not here. Every glance, every relationship, every expression of affection is dissected. Love becomes political. Personal moments become public property. I think back to someone I loved long ago, before the fame became overwhelming, before every decision I made could ripple across headlines. She was not famous. She didn't care about music charts or awards or cameras. She was real, grounded, and terrifyingly honest. For the first time, I felt I could exist just as myself, not as the performer, not as the idol. And yet, that's precisely why it couldn't work. In Korea, love under my name becomes a spectacle. I chose to protect her by stepping away, telling her she deserved a life in daylight while I lived in shadows. She cried, and so did I, silently, in a way no one could see. That experience taught me more about love than I could have imagined. Love isn't about visibility, it's about safety, about being brave enough to be known without risking another's peace. And yet, I've carried guilt ever since. Was it protection or cowardice? Maybe a little of both. Every relationship since has been filtered through that lens, weighed against the impossibility of a life lived openly without consequence. Still, love finds its lessons in unexpected places, in the laughter of the members, in messages from ARMY, in quiet moments after a concert when the adrenaline fades and we sit together exhausted, sharing nothing but presence. These are the fragments of intimacy that remind me connection exists even without spectacle. It's in these moments I realize that love doesn't always have to be romantic to be profound. Even so, marriage feels like a mountain I can't climb here. Not because of the person I would choose, but because the world would intrude, always. The version of Taehyung the public knows cannot coexist with the man who loves quietly, who cherishes intimacy, who desires normalcy in a life that rarely allows it. And that gap between public perception and private reality makes commitment feel impossible. I think about my family, especially my mother. She worries, she asks when I'll settle down, when I'll have a family. She doesn't understand that it's not about finding the right person, it's about finding a space where love can exist without being dissected, where hearts can meet without interference. How do you explain that love isn't just a feeling but a sanctuary? That the world, even with all its applause and admiration, can never replace the intimacy of being truly known? I've come to accept that patience is part of the process, that love, like music, needs rehearsal, reflection, and understanding. I keep learning how to offer myself fully, without filters, without fear, without performing. The lessons come in small ways. A shared glance with Namjoon, a quiet joke with J-Hope, the presence of Jungkook beside me, Jim's understanding silence. They teach me that love is not always loud, that it exists in the moments that no one witnesses. Sometimes I imagine what life could be like somewhere else. Somewhere quiet, where I can hold someone's hand without the world interpreting, where I can wake up next to the person I love without cameras, without speculation, without headlines. Maybe that's why I keep telling myself marriage isn't about where it happens. It's about the courage to love fully and safely and to be present without losing yourself to expectation. There's a freedom in that thought. It's not about abandoning Korea, not about rejecting the world that raised me. It's about protecting love from the forces that would distort it, preserving intimacy in a life where nothing is private by default. That's why I can't marry here, not because I don't want love, but because love deserves more than the spotlight can give. Sometimes I sit alone in the studio, long after everyone has left. The monitors hum, the lights dim, and I listen to an old song I wrote years ago. It reminds me of moments that no one saw, moments of vulnerability that were my own. That's when I understand what it means to love quietly, to nurture it, protect it, practice it, even when no one else notices. To learn that love isn't always about presence in the world, but presence in the heart. And in those moments, I feel hope, not the kind measured in applause or headlines, but a quiet, steady hope that love will find its way, that I will find the courage to be fully known, that the right person will meet me in the spaces where the world can't intrude. Until then, I continue to practice being present, practice loving without spectacle, practice existing fully as Taehyung the man, not Taehyung the idol. Because love, like music, requires patience, dedication, and presence. It requires silence, trust, and courage. And I'm learning, slowly but surely, to give it what it deserves. To protect it, nurture it, and wait until the world finally allows me to share it without compromise. I often reflect on how love and life intertwine with fame and how being constantly observed reshapes even the most intimate emotions. When I walk through the streets of Seoul, even in disguise, there's an invisible weight pressing on me, the eyes of the world, the curiosity, the assumptions. Every gesture becomes interpreted, every smile analyzed, every silence questioned. How do you nurture a love so delicate in a place that refuses privacy? That's the heart of why marriage feels impossible here. Sometimes I picture her the one I could love without fear, without compromise. I imagine walking beside her, sharing simple moment, laughing at a silly joke, cooking a quiet meal, feeling the warmth of someone who sees me as I truly am. In my mind, these moments are not grand or performative. They are ordinary, private, sacred, and yet they feel impossibly distant in a world where ordinary is public property. Jim often reminds me that love isn't about urgency, it's about readiness. I've learned the hard way that rushing into relationships under scrutiny can destroy the very thing you're trying to protect. I've loved, I've lost, I've let go, not because I wanted to, but because I understood that some things are too precious to expose prematurely. That is why I keep myself patient, why I wait for the right circumstances, the right space, the right person. Being a member of BTS has taught me lessons I never expected. Love exists in many forms: in brotherhood, in the shared struggle, in the laughter and tears of the members beside me. These bonds are intimate in a way that cannot be displayed, cannot be commercialized, cannot be understood by those outside. They are proof that connection exists even when visibility is limited. They remind me that love can survive without applause. Yet the desire for a romantic, private love never fades. It grows quietly, steadily, demanding patience and courage. I want someone to witness my unfiltered self, not the version the public applauds. I want a home that feels like a sanctuary, a love that is chosen daily, not dictated by expectation. And perhaps that's why I haven't married yet. Not because I fear love, but because I fear misrepresentation. Because I want the right foundation before opening my heart fully. I think back to moments I've shared with fans, with strangers, with friends, each one a lesson in presence, in authenticity, in connection. Even amidst the chaos, these fragments remind me that love is not always loud or visible. It thrives in quiet understanding, in patience, in choosing someone every day without needing validation from the world. Sometimes I wonder if people truly understand the sacrifice required. Love isn't simply about being with someone, it's about creating a space where both hearts can exist safely, privately, fully, and for someone like me, this requires extraordinary care. Because one wrong moment can ripple into headlines, into speculation, into intrusion. It is not just my heart at stake, it is the heart of the person I love. Even now, I continue to learn. I watch couples who are free to exist without judgment, and I envy them, but I also study them. I observe the ordinary magic in their lives: quiet mornings, shared laughter, gestures that require no applause. I take note, absorbing lessons in love I cannot yet live openly, and I wait, preparing for the day when circumstances allow me to offer the same. I have come to see that marriage is not a goal but a practice in patience, presence, honesty, and trust. I continue to grow through every experience, every relationship, every quiet moment of reflection. Through music, I learn to express the emotions I cannot say aloud. Through friendships, I learn to trust, to support, to witness, to be witnessed. And through solitude, I learn to understand my own heart, to find stillness amidst noise, to cultivate readiness for when love finally becomes safe. The world often mistakes fame for freedom, but it is not. Freedom, true freedom, is rare, delicate, and private. I seek freedom not to escape responsibility, but to create space where love can exist untainted. Until that space is possible here, I cannot marry, because love deserves protection and marriage demands courage. A courage I am still cultivating in a life that has long demanded performance over authenticity. And so I continue to practice. I continue to love quietly through my music, through my friendships, through the small sacred moments that the world may never see. I practice being present, being human, being ready, because when the time comes, I want to love fully, without reservation, without compromise, without fear, not for the world to see, but for the person who will see me for everything I am. I know patience can be painful, but it is a necessary part of growth. Love is not something to be rushed, not something to be performed, not something to be dictated by expectation. It is something to be nurtured, protected, and offered when it can exist safely. And that is why, despite longing and desire, I have not married. Because love requires more than hearts, it requires sanctuary, trust, courage, and readiness. Perhaps one day, when the stage lights fade and the cameras turn off, when the world finally allows the quiet, I will find her. Someone who doesn't need to be impressed, someone who values presence over performance, someone who will witness the man behind the idol without fear or judgment. And when that day comes, love will no longer be a rehearsal. It will be lived fully, privately, beautifully. Until then, I remain in practice. I continue to learn, to grow, to hold space for love in quiet corners of my life. I continue to protect intimacy, to cherish connection, and to cultivate readiness for the day when marriage is possible, not as a public declaration, but as a private sanctuary, as a choice made freely, fully, and with heart. I often tell myself that love has been walking beside me all along, in the laughter of my brothers, in the kindness of strangers, in the courage of showing up every day despite fear. It exists in moments too small for headlines, too private for cameras, yet profoundly real. And that may be enough for now. Perhaps one day it will be enough for her as well. At times, I think about how fragile love can be in a life lived under constant observation. Every gesture I make is analyzed, every word I speak can be twisted, every relationship becomes a subject of speculation. And yet, in spite of that, I feel deeply. I feel the longing, the hope, the desire for connection that is unfiltered, unobserved, undisturbed. That longing is what keeps me awake at night and what keeps me searching for the quiet spaces where love can breathe freely. I remember a moment during our last tour when we were in New York. The crowd had roared, the stage lights had faded, and the arena was emptying. I stayed behind for a few minutes, sitting alone in the dark seats, letting the silence settle around me. In that quiet, I could hear my own heartbeat again, the one drowned out by cheers and applause for so long. That is when it hit me. I've given so much of myself to the world that I've forgotten how to be fully present for someone else. Jim was the first to understand this without me saying a word. He has a way of seeing me that no one else does, of knowing what lies behind the mask. He once said, "You're protecting love even before it begins." and I realized he was right. Every choice I've made, every step I've taken has been with care to ensure that love exists in a space where it can remain intact, uncorrupted by expectation or intrusion. It's a strange kind of courage, the kind that demands patience and restraint. I think about her sometimes, the person I could have loved, the one whose presence felt like home. She was simple, grounded, entirely real. And yet I had to let her go because I couldn't risk her peace, couldn't risk the intrusion of a life that would never leave her alone. That decision haunts me, even as I understand it was made from love. Protecting someone from the world is often more painful than protecting yourself. In the quiet, I find lessons in love. I find them in music, in the laughter of the members, in the unspoken connections we share. I find them in moments where the world doesn't exist, where presence is the only thing that matters. These lessons remind me that love doesn't always need recognition, applause, or acknowledgement. It can be private, sacred, real, and perhaps in that realization, I am preparing for the day when love can exist fully in my life again. Marriage, I have learned, is not about location or ceremony. It's about readiness. It's about offering your whole self without fear, without performance, without compromise. And that is why I cannot marry here in Korea, not because I don't want to, but because love in its purest form cannot survive under constant scrutiny. To give my heart fully, I need space, I need safety, I need freedom. I continue to imagine what it might be like. Waking up next to someone without fear of cameras or commentary. Holding hands on the street without speculation. Laughing at something private, knowing that no one else can touch this intimacy. These are the dreams that keep me patient, the dreams that remind me why I've chosen to wait. Because love deserves more than compromise, more than exposure, more than performance. It deserves sanctuary. Even in solitude, I find glimpses of it. Moments in the studio after everyone has gone, listening to an old song I wrote. Moments when I catch a quiet glance from a member that says everything without words. Moments when I walk through the city at night and witness love existing unguarded, unpolished, unobserved. These fragments remind me that love is alive, even if I cannot yet claim it fully for myself. Jim often tells me that love is not about rushing, it is about learning, practicing, and understanding before the world demands a display. Every private thought, every quiet feeling, every unspoken longing is part of the preparation for a love that is safe, honest, and enduring. And in that preparation, I find peace. Not the loud, public kind of peace, but the still, quiet, intimate kind that allows the heart to breathe. I think about the life I want to build, not the one the world expects, not the one defined by fame or spectacle, but one defined by intimacy, trust, and presence. I want a love that exists beyond headlines, beyond scrutiny, beyond assumption. I want someone who will see me as I am, not as the image the world has created. That is the love I am waiting for, the love I am preparing to give fully when the time and place are right. Until that day, I continue to live, to love, and to grow. I continue to practice being present, being human, and being ready. I nurture intimacy in quiet corners, in small gestures, in moments no one else witnesses. I continue to give myself fully to the music, to the members, to the fans, and in that I find fragments of love that sustain me. And so, perhaps one day, when the world finally allows privacy and sanctuary, I will find her. Someone who doesn't need perfection, someone who values presence over performance, someone who understands that love is not about being seen, but about being safe, cherished, and fully known. When that day comes, I will not be rushing, I will not be performing, I will not be hiding, I will be living and loving, fully, quietly, honestly. Until then, I remain patient. I remain present. I remain hopeful. Love is walking beside me, even now, in laughter, in quiet gestures, in courage, and in presence. And that, for now, is enough. One day it will be enough for her too. Because love, like life, requires patience, presence, and courage. And I am still learning how to give it fully without compromise, without fear, without distraction. Until that day, I will continue to practice through music, through reflection, through the quiet moments that teach me how to love without performance, how to be fully human, and how to wait for the love that can exist safely, privately, and honestly.